Shannon, welcome to the show again.
Oh my goodness. I love being here with you. Thank you.
Oh, same. Well, today we're talking about writing, and I want people to know that don't turn this podcast episode off if you don't consider yourself a writer. I think that there's going to be something in here for everyone. And if people know me, they know that I'm a writer. I consider myself a writer. I've been writing since I was a kid. Haven't always been an author though. Like, what's your writing when you're not a professional writer? What are you doing with writing?
Oh, I love that. Well, first, as
Yeah.
you're talking, I absolutely think, yeah, we're talking about writing today, but we're also talking about creative expression.
Yeah.
And I feel like now more than ever, that is inside of us, that it's like this urgency that I'm feeling so many people I talk to of we have like something inside of us that wants to come out. And it can be in creative expression. And for many of us, it is writing. And you and I both know we are we are writers at our core, career authors even. And so when you ask about what does it look like when we're not authoring books, to me, writing is a form of feeling, healing, and honoring my true self and my inner world. I think sometimes, I grew up feeling very misunderstood. I'm also neurodivergent and highly sensitive person and a Pisces.
And you're a Pisces, yeah.
I feel the world so deeply.
Yes.
And when I was younger, I would literally sit at recess and just write poetry. And that was my happy place.
Oh my gosh.
I was bullied royally for it, but I was happy until the outside world kind of came in. But
Yeah.
fast forward to like now as an adult, returning to these poetry things that I wrote when I was in 7th grade, pulling out song lyrics that I have journals of for years on years. There are ways for me to express what is true for me. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest shift for me over the last, we've been in this business for almost 2 decades, right? But 15 years. For me, it's been about before I'm writing something and I'm going to get it out there and it's for the people. But now I'm shifting into a place for me. My hobbies are writing things for me again. And it's turned into writing cookbooks, recipes. It's turned into writing songs and releasing those. To me, there's a joy that's come back versus making it a job. How about for you?
Well, very similar. I wasn't the kid that was writing on the playground or anything like that, but I would have never really considered myself a writer until I was way later in life. And you pointed to something really interesting, and I have one more question for you too about self-expression. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today, and that we're in the business of women's empowerment at the end of the day. And I think we are highly under self-expressed. And
Absolutely.
just with everything that's going on in the world, I wanted to have you on to talk about these things. But writing, when I'm not writing professionally, writing is usually either journaling, very messy and very inconsistently. And also poetry has been one for me too, that has been new over the last, probably I would say 7 years or so, and has picked up speed, especially over the since I've gone through my own dark night of the soul and spiritual experience. And I want to shift gears though and ask you, for people listening who might consider themselves like writers and identify with that sort of label, has there ever been a poem or song or a piece of writing that scared you to publish, or even if it was to share it with one other person? And what did you learn from doing it anyway?
I think this is such a great question because I think all of us feel this. And, there's a difference. I have so many people who come to me and they're like, how do you become a writer? Like, I started my career as a travel writer. How do you publish books? And I said, well, are you writing? And they're like, no. Right. And it's like, well, let's start there. Like, to be a writer, you write. And like you said, journaling each day, or even just journaling once a month. To write is to get what we have in our head and our heart and our body out onto the page. And I prefer writing, typing, all of that is a way to get it out. And there are times where it becomes very vulnerable. And I think that is when we reach in and find the courage within. But to me, the biggest moments of my career, not even career, my life, have been when I've given myself permission to push through that fear. And that fear is usually like, what will people think? Or usually for me, it's this deeper, oh my God, I've never allowed myself to say this because, to your point, we've been silenced or we've been conditioned or taught to like our words don't matter. And then we've tried in the past to say, hey, this is important to me, and other people kind of scoff at it. And so that gets in our system. And for me, I think more personally has been the songwriting. I've been writing, getting back into my lyrics, and I've been releasing them with the help of new technology. And it has been the most rewarding thing for me because it's healing as I write it, and release it. But there was something that happened before I released the first album earlier this year. I remember releasing books, and it was almost like a conveyor belt of, I know this is what I have to do. I'm
Yep.
doing it. It was like, I got this. I'm doing this book. But with the music, there was so many layers to it. It was more personal. It was more in depth. These are lyrics like from the depths of my soul. And so allowing yourself to do that and then put it out in the world, there is a freedom that once I released it, I was like, there was a freedom that I have never felt in my life. I felt like I was lighter than I had ever been. I've healed through it. I no longer ruminated about certain things. The grief has kind of settled. So I feel like writing can heal. I often say writing is my therapy. For me, it's a breath of fresh air, and so, on that token, I wanted to ask you actually a couple questions. And I think when we think about that, that's such an important thing. You've had times in your life too where you turned to writing and it almost became a pivotal time, a tool for you. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Well, I think that I'm similar to you in that, writing feels like, I can't remember what you said, like maybe it was when we weren't recording, but you said it feels like breath to you. And same. And I think that one thing I want to say too about writing that I was just thinking of when you were talking, when I mentioned you're a Pisces, and we're Pisces and Aries, very different signs, like, but also complementary. Like you lean more emotions, I lean more action and intensity and boldness. And the thing that doesn't matter at the end of the day is whether you're an introvert or extrovert or both. Because a lot of times people, and this is a side note, I'm going off on a tangent here. Hold on. I'm going to come back
Which
to
we love. We love. We'll
but it
take
was just
it.
something that I thought of because like you could look at it as like, well, writing helps people who are more introverted find their words and use their voices. Because I often tell clients like who are afraid to have a hard conversation with someone, I'm like, write a letter, write it down and send it.
Yeah,
I'm all for
exactly.
that. But not
Yeah.
necessarily because I identify as an extrovert. And I also love words and I love to communicate. My Venus and my moon are in Gemini and we love to yap and we love to communicate. And so for me, writing in that way has helped me find the words I didn't know were missing and also make them beautiful.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like we all want to just be understood.
Yeah.
We all want to be understood by other people, but first we need to understand ourselves. And I think that writing can help that. So I already forgot exactly what the question was.
That was the question. You answered it. It was like, how has writing helped you, really? Right. And
Okay, that
you really,
was it. Yeah, I answered
you
it.
said it in such a beautiful way, though, because it's not so much about, I think sometimes when we're trying to get into a piece of writing or we're thinking, man, I want to write a book. I work with a lot of people too who we get stuck in what is it going to be and who is it going to be for. And I think if we return back to the inside of, I'm going to write for me first,
Yeah.
everything changes. And honestly, I know you and I could both talk to this. We have books out in the world. I have 7 books, 2 more coming. And within those books, the one that is still the bestseller, the 2 that have topped the sales are the ones that I was like the most balls to the wall. Don't hold back. Just say what I need to say. Don't worry about who's going to read it. I look back on like the self-love experiment and I'm like, I can't believe I wrote that. Like, but I did. And people around the world are like, thank you for sharing that. I am you. And that's the power of story when we can really share. And so sometimes though, the books that are most important to us don't get to the people at the time too. And so it's not about the outcome. It's about the process of writing that I've learned that has been the most fulfilling for me.
Absolutely. And I want to just speak to memoir real quick for anybody listening who loves to read memoir, has thought maybe I should write a memoir, or if you've had people say, oh my gosh, you should write a book. I think memoir, and if I could speak really candidly, because I love to tell the truth. I was like you, like kind of conveyor belt, I can write a self-help book in my sleep. That's what I tell people. And the thing that has been on my heart the most, like my most precious project is a memoir. And people have asked me like, when are you going to write the memoir? When are you going to write the memoir? And I've been writing it behind the scenes, but I was told by people who will be unnamed, but important people in the industry who make decisions about book selling, saying like memoir is really hard to sell to a publisher. It's really hard to sell to an audience. It's hard to market if you're not already a celebrity. And that makes me infuriated. Like, it just makes me so mad because I'm like, as a professional, I'm basically being told, we don't want you to write that, Andrea. Like, we want you to stick to self help because we know that it sells, because capitalism. However, being the
Yep.
disobedient bitch that I am sometimes. No, and it's not about being disobedient. It's about wanting to tell this story. And I think about all of the women listening to this podcast who maybe it's not a full memoir that they want to write. It's just an essay or a chapter. And I'm here to tell you, please write it, even if it
Yeah.
never sees anyone else's eyes except yours. When
Yeah.
you write in the form of memoir, it has a theme, it has a story arc. Memoir writes like fiction. When you write even a chapter of it, it can heal you. It can
Yeah.
change you. And so if people get nothing from this episode, that's what I hope that they get. It's just like write a portion.
And I absolutely love that you say that, because that's actually what brought us together for this. You know, we're doing a webinar and we're having this beautiful 6-week program or mentorship we're going to do. And with all of that, it's because our memoirs brought us together, and also our friendship. But we both were talking about, you know, what's on our hearts right now. It is the legacy of these words need to be shared. I'm working on my memoir too. But you know what's interesting? I love that you shared what you shared, because we have had the same agent. We've also been to author events together in person. And I've heard that same feedback, and I'm hearing it right now as we're getting ready to pitch my memoir. And I hear it. And instead of, there's a different energy that comes where I say, well, watch me. I'm going to sell it. I am going to get it out there. So I'm hearing what the publishing world is telling me, and I'm not using it as a barrier. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but for me, it becomes fuel that says, you can't tell me what to do with my career. I'm going to write this and we're going to approve. We're going to get it out. And so I love that we come at it from these angles of honoring our true self, knowing that no matter what, this message needs to get out in the world. And oh my gosh, writing memoir is so fun. I got like character arcs. I got like dialogue.
That's fun. Yeah, it is fun. I am curious, and we're talking to anybody who writes here. What do you feel is the difference between writing that will help you process something, like process an event or even, you know, something difficult that happened to you, and writing that actually transforms it? And so, because you can process it, but then there's the actual, like, the stuff that feels like it heals you. For you, and maybe somebody can heal somebody who's reading it because they're reading it in a certain way that is like, oh my gosh, because I've had that happen to me. So I don't want to say too many words because I do that sometimes. What do you think is the difference between those two ways of writing?
Well, I think what's interesting is we probably answer this different. And so I'm interested to how you would answer too. But for me, it's almost about the outcome versus, there's sometimes we sit down to write something and it's because we're looking for an outcome. But I think the shift for me in my career really changed when I said, I'm going to write because these are the words I have to say. I can't, like, it became almost like I'd go to bed at night, and I love asking people the question, what keeps you up at night? And it's not like my cat is pawing at my neck. It's more like, you know, oh my gosh, I'm going to die with the word still in me. If I don't write this book, then I'm going to feel like something is left undone at the end of my life.
Yeah.
And that's what drives me, because it's very much this pull from within. And so that's a different angle. But then there's a time where a publisher came to me. I remember when I started my career and I would hear about other authors, and publishers would say, hey, would you like to write this? And I was like, you know, you made it when a publisher does that.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. And then they did that. It was the worst experience.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, sure, I can write it. This is great. And then the whole thing was like pulling teeth to try to like balance it out. Worst sales ever, right? So it's kind of like, you know, be careful what you wish for. But more importantly, I think with this question, it really comes back to the internal motivation of what all writing can heal. I have learned so much from even the books that haven't sold, but also the books that have. And so how would you kind of answer that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's I think the key. I think that self-help books are fantastic. I would not have written 4 of them if I didn't think so, right? Like, you can tell someone tools to do it. And I know both you and I weave in stories in our self-help books. And I think that's great. And I've, you know, so many times people have told me how much my books have helped them because I'm pointing to their lived experience.
Yeah.
However, I also think that with storytelling, like you were talking about, like, you know, everybody has this sort of story inside of them that they don't want it to die within them,
Yeah.
is that when we can tell stories, and for me, the stuff that has seemed to hit the most, both with my own transformation and the feedback I get from other people, are when I pretty much like put a knife in my own chest and like gut myself. I know I'm being very dramatic, but and that is on purpose, where I open myself up and just like look inside and just kind of like shine the light on all the really painful parts. And sometimes it's the joyful parts too. It comes down to emotion. When
Yeah.
I can really dig into the emotion around it, that is the stuff that transforms people, especially the stuff that the shadow things,
Hmm.
like where people are like, oh my God, I can't believe she's talking about that. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I never looked at it that way. I never thought anybody would show it to me in that way.
Hmm.
That is what makes transformational writing, not just for other people, but for yourself, because I have hurt my own feelings with my own writing, like in the
Yeah.
best
I
way.
think in the best way. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you're talking to transformation, it really does come back to not worrying about what other people will think. And that is what you can tell a piece of writing when I read it and you can tell they're writing to kind of, so many of us, I think the number one thing we can do no matter what, whether it's about writing and relationships, is to stop worrying about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
We hold ourselves back so much in life by worrying, needing validation, needing approval. And if you're doing that in your books and your writing, there is a way you write somewhere, even if it's subconscious. And I think that's what's really special about the way you write and the way I write now, is where we go in and just like you said, cut ourselves open, because that is where the transformation happens. It's kind of like with any good book you've read, think about that. What they say is like the truths. To me, you say emotion and I say it's the truths. It's the truths. You know, Martha Beck talks about it, Elizabeth Gilbert in her latest book. These are the things. And I have a song lyric in my recent album that I released of, the She Saves Herself album. These are the things you're not supposed to say.
Yeah.
And I say, because saying them makes you feel like you care so much, but that is a way where you're going deeper into your body and allowing yourself to say the things that you're not supposed to say. But when you do, you become closer to people, you reach more readers, you feel closer to yourself, and you're opening up intimacy with people around you. It's the most beautiful expression.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I wanted to ask you actually, if you could go back to your earlier, younger writing self, what's one thing that, not really about craft, but, about trusting your voice and that you are enough? What would you tell your little you?
Oh my gosh, trusting voice. So I'm going to answer this by circling back to something that you just said about stop caring what other people think when you're writing. That has been one of the most difficult things for me to master, more than anything, more than like craft, more than, really honing my voice as a writer. It is the not caring what other people think. And then especially if you get into more professional writing, whether you're doing a Substack and you need more subscribers or you are pitching to agents, that is hard when you kind of do have to worry about what other people think. And I look at it as like, okay, you're on your way to finding your voice and finding your craft and like putting a flag in the ground and saying like, this is what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to write about, etc. And so what I would tell my younger self is the same advice in regard to that specifically, what I tell people. I feel like a coach many, many years ago may have given this to me as an assignment, and I took it and ran with it. And
Yeah.
I say that because I would say who the person was, but I can't remember who it was. And I was agonizing over a certain piece of writing, and it may have been for a book. It may have even just been for a blog post. I can't remember. And my assignment was, whether someone gave it to me or I gave it to myself, was do this piece of writing as if I have just received an email from a friend or a woman in my community and I'm replying. So in other words, like, what if this was just to one person? When I wrote Make Some Noise, I struggled with that one so much because it was slightly different from my other two books. I wrote that as a love letter to my daughter, that whole book. That's why the dedication is to her. So that is, I wanted to give that as like a takeaway to people. Like that's what I would tell my younger self is like, as you're trying to stop caring so much other people think, when you sit down to write, just think about writing to one person, just to one person. And then, you know what, at the end of the writing, then you can decide if it's going to be published or whatever. So
That's so
what I would say.
special. I Love that you said that because I've often done that. I'm on a very different journey. I haven't been married and I don't have kids. And I am on a journey in this life to really understand myself, honor myself. And so for me, I have written to my inner self. My next book is dedicated to my inner child. And I
Oh
think
my
that there's something of,
gosh.
so what you've done for your daughter is like how I've shown up. And I think that's such a beautiful way when we can tap into this part of ourselves. And so I love that. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Well, I also want to ask you, like, why do you think so many women, because I know that there's so many women listening to this particular episode who have something powerful to say, whether it is a simple, like going off on Facebook about what's happening in the world to say right now. And they have all these things that they're struggling to say because they don't trust that their voice is either enough, that they don't feel like they're going to get the words right. Like, why do you think so many women struggle here?
This is such a micro and macro kind of thing because so many women, we all go through this. We live in a world where we're silenced, we're pushed down, and I think in our relationships and our conditioning and our family environments and our work environments, it's still very much there's still so much of that going on. But then on the internal level, I think a lot of us internalize that. I know for me, the most important thing when I have experienced in my journey is like going through and when you're getting ready to release something, it can be scary because you're actually taking what you've worked on for years or months or even a couple days and you're putting it out into the world. And in the past, when we've done that, a lot of the times it hasn't turned out the way we had hoped. We
Right.
didn't get the validation or the support. And so when it comes to we don't trust ourselves, I think a lot of it is a combination of the conditioning, but also the doubt that we've built up. But I also think too, a lot of us have learned to like not trust our creativity because we've grown up in society, especially with parents who might have been very logical or you can't make a living. I've heard so many people. I get questions at least still. I've been in the author industry for like 15 years and I get people who ask me like, can you actually make money as an author? And I'm like, absolutely. Like you can. A lot of us do other things because we love it. But I feel like there's such a mentality around being creative and starving. And
Oh, yeah.
that slows us down. And so we don't trust what we don't know. And so I often like to say, I'm going to drop into my heart. And I go back to that little girl writing at recess who felt like the most free version of herself and happy. When you connect to this true part of you, you are living in such integrity with yourself and you are trusting yourself because you realize this is the path forward. You're honoring yourself. And when you do that, you're honoring those around you. You're supporting everyone because there's so much love in what you're doing. So to me, it's about trust is really synonymous with I'm going to love myself through this.
Yeah. It's
How
all
about for you?
emotional.
Same, right?
Yeah, same. It's all emotional. And I just want to underscore what you were saying about how, and then the way I talk about it is like, we followed the rules. As women, we followed the rules to be quieter, to not voice our opinion very much, especially if it was going to upset anyone or raise any questions or eyebrows, whatever it is. And so that is in it's in our tissues, that like silence equals
Absolutely.
safety. Silence equals safety. Being
Yeah.
small equals safety. I love that you are dedicating that piece of writing or the book to your inner child. And I think that I've come to realize now so much that I'm in my 51st year now that
Happy birthday soon.
so happy birthday soon to me. I know it'll be 51. Then I'll be in my 52nd year, technically, is that so much of our creative expression points back to our inner child. And to like I call it like getting back to your factory settings is like the person that you were meant to be in this world. And so much of our writing can be, I mean, to be honest with you, I would say 80% of the writing that I do for myself is based on, maybe more than that, probably 90% is based on healing the wounds of my inner child. Like the
right?
disappointments that she has, the expectations that she had that didn't come true. And I think we don't realize that, but like spoiler, that's what writing is often. And I also think that we are, and this is kind of off topic, but I want to get up on the soapbox. We are highly, highly under self-expressed. I may have already said it here,
Absolutely.
but we are under self-expressed, even now with, the strides that the feminist movement have given us to be able to express ourselves more. Still, no, not far enough. Not far enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And on this, as you're sharing this, what a gift to ourselves, though, to be able to kind of allow ourselves to write, to do that. And I love, as you're sharing that, you're right. It's almost always about, I often say, like, we write to the version of us 3 to 5 years ago, sometimes, like when you make it through, but sometimes, like when I wrote the self-love experiment, I was in it. I did not love myself, but through writing that, I learned how to love myself.
Yeah.
But as you were sharing what you were just sharing, something else came up to me. I've written the introduction to my memoir, and I started. I don't know. This is like no one knows this. No one.
Okay.
But we do now. I feel like I need to share it with you. It's just you and me right now. Okay.
Yes.
I wrote the whole entire book, and it was 120,000 words, and it was fiction. Every
That's
single
a
word.
lot for people who don't know. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Like most, that's like twice
Even
the
for
size
fiction.
of our normal self-love
Self-help book.
or our self-help books. So I wrote it in fiction, and then I started pitching fiction agents, and I was like asking myself, why am I doing fiction? I'm expanding as a writer, but the truth is, I had to really sit. You ask what, it comes back to trust. And it wasn't so much self-trust. It was, I didn't trust that I would be believed. I didn't trust that people would believe that this book reads like a psychological thriller / sci-fi romance novel. It really, and that's my life. I lived through it. And so I lived years of being gaslit, denied, darvoed, emotionally abused, and so used to second guessing my own kind of intuition that if I put this out, people are going to just continue to just like kind of scapegoat you. But I realized that's when it has to be nonfiction. And I went through, and now it's about like 80,000 words, much more appropriate. And I left all the stuff that feels a little like crazy in there because it is a psychological thriller. I lived it. And so the more honest I can be with it. And I wanted to share that because the truth will set us free. I have to share this.
Yeah. You were talking about your memoir and how it reads like a psychological thriller. So does mine.
Right?
So does mine. It's so, because, it's not a new relationship anymore, but David and I have been together for Dr. Fox, as people know him on my podcast. We've been together for about 19 or so months, and he knows my story. And like every once in a while, like lately, I'll tell him like another detail, like a short story from that period of time that my memoir is about. And the last time I told him, he was like, he laughed a little bit. And I was like, are you laughing at my story? He goes, no, I'm laughing because your story is absolutely bonkers. He's like, I cannot believe that happened to you in such a short amount of time. And I'm like, I know. That's why I'm writing a book about it. And I don't, people listening, like, your story does not need to be a psychological thriller. And I want to
or a romance novel.
I want to say, yeah, I want to say this too, just to talk to the people who have that story that they're worried that they cannot have certain people read it or know that they've written it, or they're worried about that. Shannon and I would give you the same exact advice. We want you to write the story anyway. Because that's the point.
Yes.
For you.
Yes. Writing.
Like, I'm not writing my memoir to make, to sell millions of copies. Like, would that be fantastic? Yes, universe, if you're listening, I'm not trying to make that go away. But more importantly, like, I felt like this story was so impactful to me and so traumatizing. And I've spent the past 2 decades healing from it, because my stuff ended like in 2006. So it's officially been 20 years since my 18-month period of drama ended, but it caused so much, I'm going to use the word damage. Like, I was traumatized to the point of like having to be medicated at certain points, and it just carried with me, and it was the heaviest baggage. And I'm about 80% done just writing it. And the only people that have read it are the coach that I hired, the consultant to help me write it, my literary agent, and David has read like snippets of it that I've been willing to share. That's it. Yeah. So 2 whole people have, and those are people that aren't going to tell anyone.
Right. Just we shared on the podcast.
Just me writing it has been one of the main contributors to my healing. Also plant medicine. But
you know what? I'm so glad you're saying that. I'm right there with you, honestly, and writing it and rewriting it. It's helped. And I like to call this post-traumatic, I don't call it, it's a post-traumatic growth. We go through things that have changed us. And like you said, you don't have to be like drama to write. Some people are like, I just want to write poetry and I love this, or I want to, start taking what's in myself inside out. honor that. And when you say just write, that's what happens when we start to write. Not only is it healing for us, but I found it tells you what it wants to be. Like at first, I could not have gotten to where I am if I didn't write it in fiction first. I allowed myself to go to the edge and say the truth. And now I can kind of go in. And same with you. It took 20 years, right? So there's no time limit to our writing. But if you feel it within you, that story came back to you. My story came back to me over and over. And we have to honor that. You have some, I like to ask and tell people, ask them, what have you lived through that changed you?
Yeah.
That's your story.
That's the question I want to ask people when I first meet them. But not everybody loves being asked that.
I think we should just go around and ask everyone that. I love it when you go deep right away. That's my favorite type of people.
The question I always want to ask people is like, who broke your heart and what happened? And nobody.
Let's start a talk show and do this. I love it. But to your point, if you think about the things that have really resonated, I mean, we are living in this world where there's so much manipulation and artificialness. The human stories are what really move us forward. That is what our ancestors have passed on. That is what lived human experience is the most important thing right now on the planet.
Especially with AI taking over. It's like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been able to, I can tell like every caption on social media and I'm like, AI wrote that. And I'll keep scrolling. Like, and even if they're my friends, like, I'm sorry, but I just, people are hungry for the human written word right now.
Yeah, they really are. And they're also hungry. What I've learned is like for just really the stories of us being true to ourselves. When you share it, just imagine like, I was sharing this with you when we were talking right before we got on. I wrote my first book, The Find Your Happy, which is a self-published book. And I had just left Chicago. I was living in Chicago, came back to Oregon. I was depressed. I was addicted to drugs. I was suffering from eating disorders. And I didn't tell anyone because when you're depressed, you feel isolated already. Yeah. But I wrote about it in the intro of my first book. And I handed my book to my family. My mom read it and she didn't know any of that.
Oh, wow.
And it was the most pivotal moment, one, in our life, because one, I realized I couldn't speak up. I couldn't tell her because one, depression, mental health, I was diagnosed with clinical depression, like your brain chemistry, like I didn't know how to ask for help. But two, in me writing it and putting it out in a book to the world was me asking not anything, but saying, here's what I have been through. And at first it was hard, of course, for any mother to see that about her daughter. You might think, oh, I failed. It brought us closer together in the long run because she learned something about me that like Shannon expresses herself. And as she shares, that's how she heals. And so she no longer looks at it as like, oh, maybe something happened for me as a mother. No, we realize we're all on our own journey. And writing became the biggest source of my healing.
Yeah. I want to just share one more thing about that because I've had a similar experience with my mom too, and like have her read things and been proud of me or surprised or whatever. But I've also had the opposite experience with that same person, and I think that that's the fear of a lot of people. And I will tell you this, what's come from that, when you share some writing and the person that you are whether you're just telling them a story about you or you're writing about them and they don't like what you have written, I think the gift in all of that will help you solidify any previous questions that you already had about that relationship. Because I don't think anybody goes into that experience like being, the reaction from someone else not being great and they're like super surprised by it, like they're probably like, man, I knew you had it in you. And so you will get clarity.
I think what you said is so important, like bumper sticker mantra important, because it has this experience where when we write, we're allowing ourselves to honor what's inside of us. And that's an expression, right? Back to creative expression. But it allows you to show more of who you really are to the people around you. And so to all of what we're saying too, it's not about like revenge or maliciousness. Or we're not being malicious. Like even when we're writing the things we've been through, it really has nothing to do with any of these people. It's about our experience. And I think when you're truly in the flow of writing and honoring that piece that keeps coming back to you, the story that you're here to say, it's about you. And that is the greatest gift you can give to yourself and the world.
Yeah. I love that. Well, let's tell people about our fun free training that we're doing on April 14th, which is the night before my birthday. Shannon and I are hosting a free training on April 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific, that is called Write the Things You've Been Talking Yourself Out of. Can you tell
Yes.
people like what are we going to talk about? What are they going to take away with if they come and join us live for these 90 minutes?
Oh man, this is going to be such a great program. We have been working behind the scenes on if we were like dropped into 2020, 26, what would we need to know? Knowing that we are living in a chaotic world, but we have
Fucking
something
weird right now.
dumpster
Sorry.
fire
I had to
behind
throw
the
that
scenes.
bomb in there.
Andrea's like dumpster fire, dumpster fire. We are living in a dumpster fire. And I'm like, yes. And now more than ever, we need to share what is inside of us, especially if you have something that keeps coming back to you. So what we've done is we created this beautiful training that is going to give you industry insights, not just from publishing and traditional like publishing, but self-publishing, but also writing, creative expression, what we're seeing in trends in the marketplace and how that is affecting us. But more importantly, like how that's going to affect you in honoring your path.
Yes, all of that. And that I'm excited because exactly what you just said. We're not just talking to people who are wanting to write books. This is people who are wanting to write more poetry or start a Substack or just, start talking about things that matter on social media and see where that leads them. And so we're also going to be talking about AI and like how can we actually use that to be helpful and how it's reshaping the world. And we're also going to talk about what stands out right now, not just to agents and editors and publishers, but to readers, the actual people who want to read your work. And I think that probably the most exciting part for me in this training is that we're going to touch on why now. Why now in 2026 when we have the Epstein files, we have ICE terrorizing the United States, when we have like all of these social, cultural, political, financial messes, like really, really big messes. Why is now? When it's so noisy. It's so noisy. Why now? That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. And then also some of the things that you have lived through are the most important things and how you can honor that and turn it into a creative expression. And I'm looking forward to sharing those tips. And it's going to be a fun time. So we want you to join us. It's totally free and we can't wait. But we're also going to be sharing a little bit more about our full program, which we'll be introducing more. But we're going to have a 6-week mentorship that is going to help you honor your voice, honor that story, and bring forward the words you're meant to write in the world.
The words you're meant to write in the world. Yeah. So for full transparency, everyone, like at the end of the webinar, just like always, we're going to be talking about a program. And I know people listening to this might be listening to it after the date. So maybe we'll have
So check out the full 6-week program.
One of the things that I'm excited to teach during our 6 weeks is on voice, because I'll be honest with you. When I first was a writer and was, I think it was when I hired my first coach to try to get my first book deal. She said, your voice is clear. I hear your voice. And I didn't know what that meant. Mm-hmm. And then when I got an editor, she said the same thing. I had to Google, what is a writer's voice? I didn't know what it was. And then now I'm like, oh, okay. And I know how to help people with that. So that's one of the things I'm excited about for the full 6-week program. But yes,
I love that.
All about that.
I'm really looking forward to the whole arc of the program. I think a lot of writer classes and mentorships really focus on just craft or just voice or kind of punching in those, you must get that word count in. We are so creating a program. And what I love about this is we're bringing our expertise, like kind of the inner and outer world, the psychological layers that keep us blocked and stalled. More importantly, the emotional aspects of honoring your voice and allowing yourself to be seen. That would take all the worry out of the marketing because you're sharing because you care. But it's a fun program with you and I together. We have that energy of your kick-ass life and, play with the world and really sharing that you're here in the world to share what you've gone through. It's going to be powerful. And we have a lot of really exciting some things planned.
Bonuses. Shannon and I are going to fight about self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Just kidding. We're not. But
I know. Well, what's really funny behind the scenes, Andrea's like, we can have like a Shannon versus Andrea. And I'm like, well, maybe we don't want to do that. She's like, no, actually, I think we should. And so now I'm like, okay, yeah. So now we have like a little picture of us boxing each other. And
where do we disagree? Yeah.
So here's the thing, though. We do disagree on self-publishing, and that's actually what brought this whole program together. Andrea and I were voice messaging back and forth because we're both teachers at Rhythmia, and we were both kind of talking about our behind the scene program, and we're like, let's go teach together. And then we're like, actually, we're both working on these really powerful books right now, and we're bringing them to the world in a different way. Let's talk about it. And that led to this whole program here that we're presenting to you. So we hope to see you there, and we can't wait to learn more. Can't wait to see you at the webinar. So thanks. It's been great to be here.
Yeah, so that link will be in the show notes for people who want to check it out. Again, it's free April 14th, and there's a recording if you can't make it live. We hope to see you live because I love to see people who listen to my podcast and come to webinars and things like that and training. So everyone, thank you so much for your time today. I always appreciate it so much. I know Shannon does too. You have so many options with podcasts. We appreciate that you spend your time with us. And remember, it's your life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now.
Thanks so much for tuning in to She Saves Herself podcast. If this episode moved you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it. If you have a question for the show, visit shesavesherself.org and send it in through the contact page. I'd love to hear from you. And while you're there, you can go to donate and you can help the cause and help support emotional abuse survivors on their healing journey. Until next time, keep going and growing. And remember, you are your own rescue and you are so worth it.